Okay, well, welcome to the April 25th, 2023 Transportation Committee meeting. I'm assuming everyone got the agenda. It looks good as presented. So Chris, I just suggest that you start with the updates.
Okay. As far as our asphalt repair challenges, we've got some good news. Our apparent low bidder came in at around 868,000, and our engineer's estimate was 1.13 million. So we're still getting good asphalt prices. We were fortunate that all the kind of major producers of asphalt bid our project, and we're pretty centrally located. So that seems to be working in our favor this year. So that'll be coming to you on, I think it was March 9th. Is that right, Tony, for their approval?
Correct.
Okay.
Chris, I'm curious, where are they located?
Well, some of them are in Tacoma. I'm trying to remember where. I think is Miles out closer to us, like out. Anyway, it's pretty easy to get to Port Orchard from.
Chris, I think it's May 9th, not March 9th.
Oh,
we already missed that date.
We're not going to wait a whole nother year. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
So Chris, we came in under quote unquote our budget. Are we going to add any additional paving to it to make up a little bit of that difference and try to get ahead a little, or are we just going to table that money till next year?
Yeah. So the good news is this is the first of 2 years in the biennium, and we have to hold some in reserve for the surfacing repairs we're going to do on the Pottery non-motorized improvement project. And then and your mayor's already kicking around some other ideas. So
I was in Chris's office this afternoon. What about this? What about that? So don't worry, we'll spend this money.
And this included all the add-ons, I've been told as well. So it's about as robust as we can get. And yeah. Okay.
Oh, sounds good.
And then unfortunately with the Pottery project, we got our design done basically as quickly as we could. We have to get approvals from WashDOT because there's a portion of the work that's in there right away. So we're getting bogged down a little bit in that. We have some utilities, and we need to get a franchise agreement, it looks like, for those utilities. So it's taken a little longer than we'd hoped. But it's still possible we can get that out this year. We'll just have to see how delayed we are. We might want to be a little more strategic about trying to get earlier in the year so we get better prices.
And for clarification, that's the project in front of the middle school, the pedestrian improvement.
Right, the complete
road diet.
Road diet. And then I'm having some issues with our consultant getting enough resources to follow through with our Bethel 5A project. So we're about 3 months behind on that, which is unfortunate because again, we're missing the good bidding window potentially. But we are pushing ahead. We'd like to, even if we end up bidding that one here in June, we're still going to go forward and see what kind of prices we can get. We want to stay ahead of some of the development work that will be happening out there, so we could potentially phase the project to get some work done. Perhaps the Lincoln and Mitchell roundabout could get completed, and maybe start the other one, and then tie it and wait till you do a winter shutdown and wait till next year to go forward with the remainder of the work. The other thing we haven't been able to do yet is PSE hasn't been able to secure all the easements that are needed to relocate the utility poles. So that's one thing that's threatening our schedule as well. So we're pushing, but we're late in the season on that, unfortunately.
Chris, remind me who the contractor is on that? Who's doing the work?
The consultant is Skillings.
Skillings. Okay.
And they did a nice job for us on figuring out that tire compound issue and got us back on track, only to kind of not be able to do the heavy lifting for us we needed right here in February and March. So gonna get a little bit of a mixed bag there. And then the other thing that's happening is the Bay Street pedestrian pathway. We've had a bit of a setback on that. We were hoping to be able to go out to bid by end of the federal fiscal year in September. But unfortunately, the design is not quite, well, how do I best say this? We're having to make the design, some of the things we're doing and needing to do in design for the project weren't anticipated in the NEPA permitting. So it looks like we've got to reevaluate the NEPA permit, which means we have to go about redoing a bunch of the environmental work to bring that up to date. Unfortunately, also because that's going to take, to reevaluate NEPA takes about a year, best case scenario, because we have to get that past the Corps of Engineers and other reviewers that just are really backlogged, and you have to get in the queue, and it just takes some time to get through those processes. And then the other kind of do loop we're getting into is we're getting to the point where enough of the regulations have changed in our shoreline permitting, we're gonna have to redo that too. So it's, I call this the do loop problem, where you know what's leading what, but the design now is having to be redone, which wasn't anticipated in the permitting. Then we have to go through that. That just adds time and money to the project. We're anticipating it's going to be another $50,000 as well to do the additional permitting that's required for the project. So anyway, that's all unfortunate. The good news is we can be connecting Washington funds that are going to fund the construction are not at risk. We have time to, those funds are still going to be available for us if we construct in even a couple of years later than we anticipated at this point. So we're going to be able to go forward and get that done. It gives us a little breathing room as well to secure all the construction easements we need and finalize the acquisitions that are needed for the project. That was looking kind of dubious going into the summer too, as far as being able to meet those timelines to get the right-of-way certified, and that may have delayed the project as well.
So Chris, even though we have to step back and reevaluate NEPA, aren't we still vested to the codes that were in effect at the time of the initial application?
No, we're not, because we're I guess enough time with the shoreline permits. We can ask Nick more about this, but you're good for some period of time, and then if the regulations change, you have to redo those. And then on the NEPA side, you know, we have to reevaluate because we changed the scope of our project based on what was permitted for. So,
okay. I thought the way that worked is once you were issued, you had a window, but as you were working through an application process, the vesting didn't change.
Yeah, and you have to keep in mind that, you know, these projects were originally started back in 2012, so a lot of time has gone by. You know, we've already completed phases 3, 4, and 5, and that all factors in. And we had as far as Bay Street pedestrian pathway, we have a study for the west of the project, so from Kitsap Transit down to Port Orchard Boulevard, and including connectivity, kind of the connection as we visualize it going through Port Orchard Boulevard and the adjacent neighborhoods. That study has kicked off. We had our kickoff meeting last week, and we're anticipating coming to this committee here next month to kind of give an update of the scope and the goals and some of the constraints, and then work with you again in June to finalize some alternatives, and then hopefully get in front of council before your summer recess to kind of select a direction for the study to go and get that work done by the end of the year. And the bigger Bethel project, Bethel phase 1 is coming along. We did some, I want to bring everything at once, but we've completed some of the study work on the transportation end of things to update it to our traffic model. We've done the survey. We're now going to go out and do some geotechnical and environmental exploration, required getting permission from property owners to get on their property. So our right-of-way consultant's working on that right now. And we're hoping to have that a discussion here for the committee here probably in June on that project also. All right, well, that's kind of what I had for the projects, the status of our transportation projects.
Okay, sounds good. I guess next is the 46-page report on McCormick traffic.
Y'all get a chance to bone up on that before the meeting?
Yeah,
Okay. All right. Well, I can give you kind of the highlights. So, one of the takeaways is that the speeds are considerably higher than the 85th percentile speed. That's the one that the speeds that most drivers are comfortable driving are considerably higher than the posted speed. So on the kind of the main drag out there, we're 16 miles an hour over the 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. And in other places throughout the neighborhood, kind of the branches, we have speeds that are 11 and 13 miles an hour over. And those are just based on the way the roads are designed and how most drivers would drive those roadways, the speeds that they feel comfortable driving. So that's kind of confirming what everybody's talking about, that people are driving too fast in the neighborhoods there.
Function of wide roads.
Yeah. The other takeaway is that there's some foliage that needs to be cut back at one of the intersections. So that's something that we can just task our operations and maintenance people to look at. There could be some sensitivities with the neighbors, but we'll explore that. That's a given. We also studied, there was a request to
So
look
Chris,
at,
if that's on private property, then it could be a code enforcement letter to notify them to trim their bushes back. And if they don't, then we go out with a very barbaric tool that butchers it.
you have your landscaper do it, so ours doesn't.
Yeah.
And it's something that we've battled with in the past with, their private landscaping trees that are overhanging the road, and then they're hitting the school buses. So something Mark Fournier needs to go out there and identify the property owners and the addresses and what they need to do, and communicate that with Christine.
yeah, that looked like the intersection of Merrimack and Glen Eagle. The recommendation, I guess, to remove foliage.
Correct.
I was looking at the map on page 3
Mhm.
and trying to, because I'm not as familiar with those intersections, but it sounded like the other Merrimack intersection that they studied at Turnberry. They talk about speed mitigation. So what did they mean by speed mitigation?
So that's
Is that-
treatments we could try, whether it's the radar feedback signs or narrowing lanes or speed cushions that we'll get to talking about here momentarily. I can share my screen and we can kind of look at the foliage if people are interested, but I didn't want to make it sound like it was super simple, but that's something we can address.
Is it green
We
foliage?
have to for the short sight lines. We
Chris?
will.
If it's green foliage, we all know what it looks like, and if it's overgrown, we got a good picture of that one too. I
Okay,
think.
all right, thank you. And okay, then we did the other thing that was looked at was, could we do all-way stops at Merrimack? And then there was one other location at Castellon. And the issue with that is we have to be careful because the MUTCD prohibits the use of all-way stops for traffic calming because it can lead to higher collision rates and more severe collisions. So it can actually cause a safety issue. So our consultant went through all the warrants, and the results are that the Merrimack ones are not suitable for that treatment or for all-way stops for traffic calming. However, the Castellon one met the warrants, so that's a possibility. And then the other thing we looked at was speed humps, and what the consultant has actually proposed is let's look at speed cushions, which are basically a modified version of speed humps, and I can show you a picture of that here. Let's see here, share screen.
Has been to Paulsbo on Front Street. These would be a bigger version of that, and they bolt down to the street so we can take them back out.
Is this the same as speed tables?
Yeah, just a different
Yeah,
version.
kind of.
So Chris is gonna show you a picture.
Yeah,
Yeah, now this thing doesn't want to blow up too well, but. Can anybody, can people see the yellow here and make any sense of
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah,
So what they are is instead of having a speed hump, which would, it'd raise and, it doesn't hit like, you don't go like bump, bump, like you would with a speed bump. But it just kind of raises you up and lowers it down. And then that effectively causes people to need to slow. Otherwise they'll get airborne going over these things. And this is a more advanced version of a speed hump. And what it does is it's more impactful to vehicles that are narrower than it is to vehicles that are wider. So if it's a transit vehicle and they're centered on the speed cushion, or a wider fire truck that's carrying a bunch of water, or an ambulance that's got somebody in the back that they've got all stuff that they're hooked up to, and they don't want to jostle the occupant or their patient, then it's less impactful on those kinds of things. So that's what they're recommending if we want to look at speed humps in these neighborhoods.
so is that because the emergency equipment, those are what, maxed out at 8.5 feet wide, whereas traditional vehicles are 8 feet wide? Is that how they're designing those?
Yeah, that's the idea. Yeah, I mean, I think they're only like 5.5 feet wide or something like that, but they'll catch if you have narrow wheelbases like you would in a sports car, then, or a smaller car, then they're more effective. The car will go up and down more, and otherwise it tapers so that the wider your vehicle is, the less impactful, the less going up and down you experience.
So like in a standard full-size truck, can you miss those? I guess is my thought, my question.
Swerve to miss them, yeah.
Yeah, so you're not gonna, even in a bus, in a transit bus, you're not gonna miss them, but they're not gonna raise the vehicle up and down as much.
Because they're
If
tapered.
the mayor's driving his pickup, he's gonna maybe not notice as much as if he's driving a Subaru, but it'll be quite a bit more up and down than you'd experience with a fire truck that's carrying water, or a transit bus or a school bus or something like that.
And it's a launch
Okay.
pad in my sports car.
The bottom line is these have been demonstrated to work on pedestrian, light and heavy vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They're probably less effective against the pickup trucks, but they're effective against all passenger or vehicles and non-commercial vehicles.
Okay.
So you still have some drawbacks, right? If you put too many of these things, you still have your emergency responders, they still have to slow to go over them. So if you have, we had dozens of these things between here and someplace where an ambulance had to get, potentially you're reducing your response times. And of course that 5 minutes or 4 to 5 minutes is critical for attending to people that have heart attacks and those kinds of things that need to be revived. So that's still a consideration. Typically, if we're in a last mile situation where we have a few of these things, it's not going to slow people down that much. But you can see if you had to navigate through a city with half a dozen speed bumps or some speed cushions, that could still be an issue. The other thing is that for snow plowing, they can't plow these, so you're going to the snow plow is going to have to raise its plow and then drive over these things and drop it back down again. So we can't really effectively plow the streets completely where we have these things at those locations. So just things to consider there.
So what we talked about internally is buying 4 of these. So we're 2 for one direction on that short street that where we're having the biggest problem, and 2 for the other direction, and use it as a bit of a pilot to try it out. And then we've got a recommendation that at one of these intersections, I think it's a 3-way stop, Chris. Is that what I heard, is to potentially change that to a 3-way stop? There was one intersection that maybe it made sense.
I think it's an all-way stop. I think it is got 4 legs to it. So
4 legs. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got couple of solutions to try that came from the analysis from the traffic consultant.
Rob, I didn't follow you there. You said we're gonna try 2 in one direction and 2 in another. Do you mean 1 in one direction?
There,
Or
well,
two
there'll
separate
be
locations?
two separate locations on that street.
Okay, okay, got it.
Uh,
Yeah, I
we're
think there was that one stretch that they were most concerned about, so that seems like that would work.
that's where we're targeting. Is to
Well,
put, so,
yeah.
so in one direction, there's a pair of them strategically
One and
placed along that section of road, and then the other direction, it's got a pair of them also.
Yeah, and the other location where we have the houses like actually fronting the street, most of the houses are set back in cul-de-sacs and not on the streets that go through. That would be Hawkstone, and we need 3 of them there, so we need more of them. So that, you know, if the pilot's successful and we want to go back and look at that, it's sometime in the future, that would be something that we could do.
So what are the costs on these particular units?
So we think we can get the kind that bolt down, which is nice too from an experiment standpoint. So you could take them back up if we decide, or if the neighborhood comes out with pitchforks and hates them, or if we decide we put them in the wrong spot or something. But it looks like around $2,000 a device. And then there's and of course we've got to have signage at, you know, approaching and then at the speed hump locations as well. So there's signage costs. So we're thinking probably $8,000 to $10,000 a location in cost to the city, including our crew time.
I'm gonna go ahead and just talk about the 1,000-pound elephant that's in the room. Why don't we just post some cops out there periodically and give out tickets? We've been told that the majority of the speeders in the morning are residents of McCormick Woods. They're probably not going to be habitual if they picked up a ticket every once in a while. Why isn't that on any of our potential mitigation?
It's not part of the traffic report, Mark, but we are doing that. We're doing traffic emphasis.
Okay, so
and we're writing tickets out there, and we're still hearing that we're not doing enough.
Yeah, and we do have some radar feedback signs that we deploy. We still have that 85th percentile speed that's 16 miles an hour over on the main drag out there, and you know, all those. The use of, we're going to need to continue to deploy those radar feedback signs and have enforcement, because that issue is not being addressed by what's proposed here.
The main drag being McCormick Woods, main drive in.
Right, from Old Clifton.
Yeah.
To Glenwood.
Okay. Well, it's easy to speed when you got nothing on either side, you know, as wide as it is.
And that's really probably where we can be. I mean, that main drive has so much more traffic than these side streets. And that's where we can be the most effective in our traffic, you know, emphasis in writing tickets. It's tough to justify putting, you know, a police officer on a side street where they're saying there's a problem, but there isn't that much traffic. Where this pilot program, that's what we're going to try to address, is this side street.
Yeah. I'm for it.
So how are these things? You say they're bolted down. Is there actually a fitting put into the asphalt to allow these things to be bolted and removed, or how are they stuck?
You're in the weeds, Mark.
Well, I'm just curious, because
Operational
if we're picking these things up and drilling holes in the asphalt everywhere, aren't we compromising the road surface?
Yeah, we drill pilot holes all the time. You just got to patch it.
But you've got issues with plowing that are going to come up in the
Yeah.
winter time. So are we pulling them up for the winter time?
No, I don't like them either. I've been advocating against putting these in, but our consultant's telling us it could work, so we should try it.
I think almost more important than the cushions themselves are the signs warning people about the cushions. I mean, and if you put them on McCormick Drive, I guess the one goal is to let people know that they might want to go around the longer way and avoid these things.
Yeah, maybe we should call some cattle crossings.
It's these things are
road when they're on the freeways or whatever, the highways.
They'll come unglued
Yeah,
because,
obligation.
you know, they'll be right in front of their house and make all kinds of noise all night long. Clank, 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 clank.
Have you seen the ones they have on highways where they actually just put the striping down and the cows don't know the difference?
I have.
no.
So they're trained not to go out on the lesser streets, and on the major streets they just put paint down and it works too.
Hmm.
But
Well,
maybe we could put in some speed humps and then take them out, and people will expect them to be there, and the signage will still be there and it'll still work.
Holographic.
Or paint on
Holograms.
So this is what the majority of the neighbors, almost all of the neighbors in that stretch of road asked for, essentially, or
They're
are
asking us to
okay
do
with.
something. They have, you know, we've had various.
They want always stops, but that's really not a possibility, unfortunately.
Right.
This is the next best thing.
I mean, we've got money in our budget, I think, to do this and try this out. I think it's something we should try.
I agree.
Yeah, and Chris, in Seattle, they have like, I know they're not called roundabouts, but they're like little plantings in residential intersections that people, what do you call those?
Calming.
Well, like little planters.
Traffic circles or mini roundabouts.
Yeah,
I think you're talking about traffic calming features, Fred, that going into the roundabouts, those mini compact roundabouts, they're forced to slow down, for example.
yeah, because they're in the middle of an intersection and they're usually residential. I remember seeing them in Vancouver, the city of Vancouver, Washington, and just thinking, well, that's weird. And I think they're in Seattle too. I don't know how much they are.
That could also be an option for Merrimack. It's just, that would be more of a project level thing than a treatment.
Far more expensive.
And don't forget, we've got golf cart traffic as well in terms of the shoulder use.
Huh. Oh, well.
All right.
So I hear Scott saying yes. Mark's going, Mark's not a believer. I'm not a believer either, but I think we owe it to the neighborhood to try something.
Well, I think we need to continue to, I agree with you there, Rob. We need to continue to do something. And if this is what everybody thinks is the best option to go, I still think we should be out there with traffic emphasis. But if this is what everybody agrees is the best direction to go, then I'm for it.
I think we try it. You know, we're not going to go out and buy 20 of these things and put them everywhere, but let's try it on this street, and maybe it's a cat's meow, or maybe it's not, and we take them out.
You are opening the door, so I mean, we potentially would do more of these otherwise at kind of the last mile locations, or areas where the cumulative effect does not cause responder issues.
I watched a couple of several speed tables go up in Hansville, and it blew the entire community up. Those that were against it and those that were for it. Those that were for it happened to live where those were being installed. But don't forget that these are designed to take vehicles at the posted speed. So if you've got issues with it, it's because you want to go greater than the posted speed.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, speed humps, you're supposed to slow down to 15 or 10.
Right. Yeah, those will mess you up.
So Scott, how does that work? Are they different heights based on the speed of the road?
Yeah, they're different. They're spread out a little bit more like these are, and they've got more of a tabletop surface to them versus a speed hump, which is more of a sharper bump, if you will. So it's the faster you go, the wider these things become on the driving surface. Chris could probably explain it better than I.
Oh, now what are you referring to exactly?
Just the speed humps versus speed tables versus speed bumps.
Speed tables. Yeah. So speed tables will be like if you have an urban area and you have a mid-block crossing, then you have the traffic kind of come up and go down. It you know, if you took them, like you say, they're more designed for the speed of the roadway. If you took them at 25, you'd probably would catch a whole lot of error. There's an emphasis of, you know, sometimes you'll do them for whole intersections to bring the intersection up so it's more convenient for people to cross. Mid-block, same thing. Basically, the idea is to have the pedestrian crossings at the same level as the sidewalk and prioritize the non-motorized users over the motorized users for that, in that respect. Now I'm getting into
That's interesting. And these are not more slippery to walk on when icy than I guess the road.
But they're not they're not where the pedestrians are. And
They
they are,
don't go under the shoulder.
yeah, then there will be a problem with our snowplow.
I think you'd still skid your knee on them if you fell down on your bike, so they're pretty grippy.
Ah, interesting. Okay. Okay. Anyone else have more thoughts on this? No. Okay.
Get them ordered, Tony.
Well, Chris is gonna have to come up with the design as well, so they'll have to know where they're gonna put them. So we'll get going on it.
Exciting. Okay. Have left or just future agenda items? Or Chris, do you have anything else under that category to report?
Oh, no, I'd already touched on the Bay Street pedestrian pathway west study and then the Bethel. So there'll be more things for your meetings coming up here.
Okay.
So, Chris, quite a while ago, I think when I was new to the Transportation Committee, at the time there was a discussion of a bunch of different kinds of discrete buckets of funding, federal funding, I think, maybe pass-through funding.
Mhm.
And some was geared towards ADA, for example, and another bucket was geared towards intersection improvements, and another bucket was geared towards pedway improvements. Are we taking advantage of those discrete buckets where we can?
Yeah, I think we have. You know,
Okay,
we've gone after we set up our little matrix and we targeted all those different funding sources. So we have
Okay.
again from
okay.
all kinds of different programs.
Yeah, I don't want to get into your weeds, but we've I just would love to see more bike-friendly roads and where we can tap into those funds to do that. I know it's complicated when you've got narrow roads and you don't want to take property and everything, but I just don't want to forget that that's important for a lot of people who would be biking more if they could.
I think we're gonna make some huge steps down Pottery and down Sydney this year.
Mm.
Our Bay Street West project, well, we don't have the work isn't done yet. I mean, I can walk out there and put my engineer's hat on and, engineer for a day hat and look at the boulevard and, we don't need a 3-lane road. We need a 2-lane road and we can solve that with paint,
Yeah,
so
right.
we're moving in that, where we can with, and
Right.
we got to manage too. As we talked about it at the retreat and staff, is pedaling as hard as they can. We really can't handle any
Yeah.
more projects right now.
That's a good point.
We did get that Ped Bike Program award too for Tremont Phase 2 and 3 to study how
Yeah,
to move
that's
people
awesome.
from the upper part of the town down to the lower part of the town, and we're going to try to integrate that in with the Bay Street West study, and so and then all of Bethel, of course, we're looking at non-motorized improvements there too.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
I've been trying to get the county interested in maybe looking at how we extend from our pottery project out to Old Clifton on Berry Lake. That's their roadway, and that's the best bicycle route because Old Clifton is a pretty steep climb, so that's a little more gradual as you go out that way to tie to our neighborhoods out there in the west. But that's there's some planning work that has to happen there because of the there's different priorities for the county on how they've gone about developing their non-motorized comprehensive plan in the short term and long term.
That's a good point. I didn't realize that Berry Lake was that much flatter, and that could be a good route. But then I don't ride a bike.
I'm not so sure it's that much flatter. It still rolls up there pretty high, right up there
Yeah.
at the intersection. It's not
Yep.
quite as long of a hill, but it'll still get you.
Yeah, really the best route from a grade standpoint is coming out the backside and then coming, but it's longer. And then coming down Sydney, but we've got a choke point at Ruby Creek, and you know, we're making some incremental improvements there, but Ruby Creek back down to Sydney needs help.
Rob, I loved what you said about solving things with paint, because I often wonder, you know, if we can do more with paint, like maybe language on the road saying slow down, does that have any effect? I don't know.
The other thing that's on our to-do list for next year is to in-house design for Old Clifton and see if we can try to figure out how to. There's that proposed separated trail that'll link the park with the splash pad to the new McCormick Village, and then to the trail systems and non-motorized pathways that serve all the different developments up there. So we're trying to figure that out. Unfortunately, we haven't been too successful on the grant front, but we're doing that. And then we're also going to study the what was the name of that concept where we have the a one lane, we prioritize bikes on the street with 2 lanes that they're doing in Port Townsend.
Right. What do we call that again?
Shoot, it escapes me. But we're going to look at that for Sydney Avenue north of Lippert as part of the study with the Tremont study design with Tremont phases 2 and 3 as well.
And
Doesn't
in that
that
area, you know, the Parkwood, you know, heading behind the courthouse campus, not down Sydney Road, south of Tremont, but to come up those side streets in there, a route that is more bicycle friendly with paint in that area.
So anyway, we'll continue to look at those develop those non-motorized projects. And then we've got a number of things, you know, we got to look for more funding for Bethel. We can get it.
All right.
And then of course when it is a grant season again, and I'll bring those ideas forward with the committee and bring you up to speed on, even if we're just going after the ones that are in our current TIP. But we'll have those conversations at those times.
Okay. So, are we expecting anything for the next Transportation Committee meeting next month? Other than updates, is there?
Yeah.
Or do you need us topics?
Yeah, so we're well, the one that's going to hopefully be there is the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway West.
Okay. Right, you did mention that earlier. Okay, that sounds good. All right, does anyone else have any items they'd like to talk about, or any good of the order? Yeah. Okay, I guess we might as well adjourn.
All right.